After World War II, a defeated Germany was divided by the victorious powers of the United States, the Soviet Union, Great Britain, and France into four occupation zones. The Berlin Blockade was an attempt in 1948 by the Soviet Union to limit the ability of France, Great Britain, and the United States to travel to their sectors of Berlin, which lay within the Russian-occupied East Germany. Eventually, the Western powers instituted an airlift that lasted nearly a year and delivered much-needed supplies and relief to West Berlin. Coming just 3 years after the end of World War II, the blockade was the first major clash of the Cold War.
Also, the Congress voted for the martial aid on 31 March 1948. Immediately, the Russians started searching all road and rail traffic into Berlin. A few months later, America and France announced that they wanted to create the new country of West Germany.
Without going to war or giving up the city of Berlin, the only option the Western countries had was to try and fly in all the supplies. This was a huge task. There were over 2 million people living in the city at the time. The army estimated that it would take over 1,500 tons of food each day to keep them alive. The West introduced a new currency called the Deutsche Mark, but the Soviets refused to use this in their zone.
The city of Berlin was an island in the middle of the Soviet control zone. The West sent supplies there via railroads and roads. However, the Soviets wanted total control of Berlin. They figured if they cut off Berlin from their external supplies and food, then it would fall under their control. On June 24, 1948, the Soviets blocked all rail and road traffic to Berlin. They cut off the electricity coming from the Soviet part of the city. They halted all traffic going in and out of the city. The only way in was to fly.
And what did it happen? The American army wanted to fight its way to Berlin. That would have caused the war. Instead, Truman decided to supply Berlin by air. The situation was bad at first, but things got better as the blockade went on. On the 12th of May of 1949, Stalin reopened the borders.
But what were the results? The Cold War got worse and it almost started an all-out war. Germany split up, and in May 1949 America, Britain and France united their zones into the Federal Republic of Germany, the West Germany. In October 1949, Stalin set up the German Democratic Republic. And on 23rd June they introduced a new currency into Bithynia and Western Berlin. The next day, the Russians stopped all road and rail traffic into Berlin.
In 1949, the Western Allies set up the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, the NATO, as a defensive alliance against Russia. NATO countries surrounded Russia. In 1955, the Soviet Union set up the Warsaw Pact, an alliance of communist states that made the end of the Berlin blockade.